Some people believe cartoons are harmless entertainment for kids, but over the years, strange rumors have surfaced online. Stories about hidden episodes, disturbing recordings, and messages buried deep inside animated shows. Tonight, we're going to explore 3 dark cartoon conspiracy stories. Story 1. The Lost Cartoon Episode. When I was a kid, I used to watch cartoons every single night before going to bed. One of my favorite shows aired late on a small local channel. I watched every episode, or at least I thought I did. Years later, while browsing an online forum about old cartoons, I found a strange discussion. People were talking about a lost episode of the show, an episode that was never aired. According to the posts, it had only been broadcast once, very late at night, and then it was removed forever. One user claimed they had a copy of the episode. Curious, I downloaded the file. The video started like a normal episode, but something felt wrong. The main character was just standing in his bedroom, not moving. No music, no dialogue, just silence. For almost a minute. Then slowly the character turned toward the screen. His eyes looked straight into the camera, and the colors of the animation began to distort. The background became darker, almost like the lights were fading. I started hearing faint whispers in the audio. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but it sounded like someone was calling a name. My name. Then the cartoon suddenly cut to a single frame of real footage. A bedroom that looked exactly like mine. That's when I realized something terrifying. The episode wasn't just a cartoon, it was watching me. Story 2. The Cartoon Studio Secret. A friend of mine once got a job working for an old animation studio. The company had been famous during the 90s for producing several popular cartoon shows, but over time, most of the building had been abandoned. His job was simple. He was assigned to work in the studio's archive room, cataloging old tapes, animation reels, and unfinished episodes that had been stored away for years. The archive was located in the basement of the building. According to him, the place felt more like a forgotten warehouse than a professional studio. Rows of dusty shelves were filled with VHS tapes and film reels that hadn't been touched in decades. But one day, while going through a box near the back of the room, he found a tape with no label at all. Curious, he decided to watch it. The tape started with a cartoon character walking slowly down a long hallway. At first it looked like a rough animation test, but something about the character's movement seemed unusual. The way the character walked didn't feel like normal animation. It looked far too realistic, almost like it was copied from real life. My friend paused the tape and rewound it, then he started playing it frame by frame. That's when he noticed something disturbing. Between some of the animated frames, there were brief flashes of real photographs. When he paused on one of them, he felt his stomach drop. The photo showed a person tied to a chair. Their face was partially covered, but they looked terrified. But the more he looked through the tape, the worse it became. There were dozens of hidden photos scattered throughout the animation. The character's posture matched the person in the photograph perfectly. The position of the arms, the tilt of the head, it was like the animation had been traced directly from the photograph. That realization sent chills down his spine. It meant the cartoon wasn't just animated, it had been created using real people as references, people who clearly didn't want to be there. My friend immediately decided he needed to report what he had found. But as he was about to leave the archive room, he heard footsteps behind him. Someone had entered the basement. A voice calmly asked him what he was doing. Then the man simply said, "That tape was never meant to be seen." My friend never came back to work after that night, and no one at the studio ever mentioned him again. Story 3. The Hidden Messages in Cartoons. A few years ago, a group of internet researchers became obsessed with a strange theory. They believed the show was hiding secret messages inside its episodes. At first it sounded ridiculous, but they started analyzing the show anyway. They downloaded every episode and began examining them frame by frame. They reversed the audio tracks and slowed down the opening sequences. And eventually, they found something unusual. In several episodes there were single frames that appeared for only a fraction of a second. Each of these frames contained a set of numbers. At normal speed, they were impossible to notice. But when the researchers collected the numbers from multiple episodes and placed them together, they formed a pattern. The numbers looked like geographic coordinates. At first the group thought it was just a coincidence. But when they entered the coordinates into a map, they pointed to a very specific location outside the city, an abandoned industrial building. Driven by curiosity, the group decided to visit the location in person. The building was old and partially collapsed. They managed to find a way inside. What they discovered there was something none of them expected. Inside the building were dozens of televisions stacked against the walls. Every single screen was turned on, and every screen was playing the same cartoon episode, over and over again. The room was filled with the sound of repeating cartoons. Suddenly all the screens went black at the same time. Then white text appeared on every television. It said only 4 words. "We knew you would come." At first the group assumed it was some kind of prank, but then they noticed something strange. The televisions weren't facing them. They were facing the center of the room, like they had been set up for an audience. That's when they realized something terrifying. The messages in the cartoon were never meant to guide humans there. They were meant to guide something else. Something that had been watching the show. and possibly watching them for much longer than they could imagine.